All right. What's up, guys? Chris Marler here, Saturday Down South. And we are being joined by one of my favorite people. Love most things about him, but hate literally every opinion he has on the subject of football. Dustin Schutte, who runs our Big Ten sister site, Saturday Tradition. And when we're recording this, it's Sunday, I believe the 30th, and we're coming off the heels of yet another incredible NFL playoff game with Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals upsetting Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes on the road. Huge come from behind win. It's we saw it last week too, just some incredible playoff games, which got us thinking, what were the best games of the college football season for each conference? So for instance, which I don't know, 19 to 17 prime number game will inevitably make his top five as a Big Ten fan between Purdue and some other throwaway school from Indiana. And then we'll also do one for the other conference in the SEC. But Dustin, first off, have you enjoyed the NFL playoffs more than the college football playoffs? And have you missed Big Ten football since it's the offseason?
I always miss Big Ten football. I could go
that.
for it 365. I say that all the time. And let me say, I mean, that the game-winning drive, Joe Burrow, former Buckeye, we all know that, but set up by Von Bell with that interception there late in the overtime period, another Buckeye. So a couple Buckeyes doing things in Cincinnati. That's going to feel good. But yeah,
it's good. Like that, because what I was going to say was like Burrow, went to LSU, won a national title, but the guy who won it on the game-winning field goal went to Florida. Because like one thing that's kind of cool with the SEC is like there's so much talent at all the different schools and not just Ohio State. So yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different. Oh, I think you're actually mad. My bad.
Unfortunately, I don't have a response to that because in this case, it's pretty much true. I mean, Eli Apple, another Buckeye graduate, was the one making some big defensive plays in that game. So,
well, I say it all in jest. So I know you're passionate about it, and to each their own. Like some people, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm sure that there was like an offensive lineman from Iowa or Wisconsin playing in the game. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. So I think that's got to be representation right there.
I mean, Ohio State, like all jokes aside, Ohio State puts a lot of kids in the league. And one thing that honestly was like, even as an SEC guy, what was kind of cool this season was we finally got to see some parity. We saw Michigan, knock off Ohio State and Jim Harbaugh get that big win he's been waiting forever. I think they were 1-14 or 1-13 in the last 14 years. And then we start seeing other stuff that honestly, and again, like I know I give you shit, but like there were a lot of things that happened in the Big Ten this year that kind of changed the landscape of college football. You talk about Mel Tucker at Michigan State and him kind of resetting the whole market for salaries for head coaches when he got his extension for like $9.5 million a year. There were some highs and some lows, obviously, as there is every year in the Big Ten. But talking specifically about the best games from the season, like what were your top 5 games from the Big Ten this year?
Yeah, the first one is it ended up not being a prime number game, but it's the epitome of a Big Ten football game, and that was the Illinois-Penn State game.
Oh my God!
That comes in at number 5. Listen, okay, we talk about this, and you're completely right. There's always it's always Northwestern and somebody that's in that prime number, like you said, 1917 type of game. But this one, 20-18, there were 2 touchdowns scored in a 9 overtime game. Both of them were in the first half. There were 6 field goals, though, which might be the most big. I did not count the number of punts. I might have needed more than my fingers and toes to count the number of punts in that game. But 9 overtimes, longest game in college football history. I'm going to admit, like, I got sweaty just watching it. It was a weekend.
Why? Nothing was happening.
That's why I was sweating. I was waiting for something to happen. And then all of a sudden, bam, Brandon Peters, Casey Washington, they upset Penn State. James Franklin got a nice contract extension and a nice bonus to lose at home to Illinois that didn't even reach a bowl game. So
yeah, I mean, in Illinois too, like it was kind of funny watching Brett Bielema go back to the Big Ten after this experiment that I still to this day will never understand why he left a job like Wisconsin, where I just feel like it's so set up for success to come to the SEC West and just kind of bang your head against the wall with like all that kind of competition and those head coaches. But him going back to the Big Ten and kind of like, I don't know, he didn't book in the season, but he had several big moments. Like they started, like the first game of the year was against Nebraska, and lowly Illinois upsets Nebraska. And then you talk like going to Penn State. I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that like I mean, Big Ten football, if you love frostbite and you love punt porn, you will love Big Ten football, because 9 overtimes and to only score 20 to 18, it's just crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you love Big Ten football and you love Nebraska, like frostbite, that's the perfect description there of Nebraska's season 2, 3. And like I could have put them honorable mention. All 9 of Nebraska's losses would be in the honorable
it's
mention.
We've never seen it before. Like it was, you almost felt bad for them, but then you remember that like they chose to live in Nebraska, and and also we talk about the Joe Burrow thing. There's still a former coach that actually looked at Joe Burrow and said, you're probably not good enough to play quarterback here at Nebraska. So yeah, just a tough scene over there in Lincoln. But take us to number 4, because that was actually a really good game, and like you said, like historical. It's the longest overtime game in college football history.
That's what we do. A lot of history in the Big Ten. Typically, it comes in the 1890s or the 1920s. When a lot of the pictures were black and white or that
right.
tinted yellow color. Number 4, we're going to go into the Big Ten SEC, the Music City Bowl, the controversial, the game that Paul Feinbaum declared a win for Tennessee. I'm not going to give him that. That was just an incredible game.
It was awesome, right?
Brock Thompson, the fact that he had over 200 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, 7 catches, awaiting double knee surgery, like that's insane.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Did
he hurt himself doing yard work? Is he like a 48-year-old dad? Like, how did double knee surgery?
Yeah, he was awaiting double knee surgery and ripped off over 200 yards. I don't know how you even play. Like, I stub my toe in the morning and I may not get to my laptop in the kitchen to go to work.
Yeah, we're just calling it a day. Like that's a sign that's just God. Like I'm going back to bed. Well, and you talk about this too. Like you're talking about a situation where this kid, like David Bell, is like possibly one of like the top 3-5 players in the entire conference. He's out. And which happens a lot in bowl season, but that was a game where it was like, obviously, like I said, the SEC ties, you're kind of, we're pulling for Tennessee down here, but what an incredible job from Purdue, like with several key players out, to still go, and they're doing it in Tennessee's backyard, right? It was an incredible game.
Yeah, my biggest concern was whether or not Nissan Stadium had enough mustard and golf balls in the stadium to satisfy the Tennessee fans. We saw that in the Ole Miss game.
Yeah, that was tough.
So, and then I'm going to jump down then to number 3, because it was like, it's the exact same 48-45, Ohio State, Utah in the Rose Bowl.
Yes. That's only number 3 for you?
Yeah, it's only number 3 for me.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, all 3 of these I think were significant in some regard. So to have them number 3, like there was a period of 65 seconds in the second quarter where we saw 4 consecutive touchdowns. Like
that's the best second quarter of football I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, I was like, I think I told you this because we were talking that day, like right before halftime. So like right around like the start of the second quarter, I was like, it's New Year's Day. Like I'm going to go to Taco Mac. I'm going to go get a couple of beers and some wings and some tater tots and enjoy myself. And Taco Mac, like from where I live, is like roughly 6 to 7 minutes away driving. And I pulled up and I was like, looked up the score. I was like, how are 21 points scored in the time it took me to get here? And I put my head down to tweet something about it. And I swear to God, there's not a touchdown. I was like, what is happening right now? It's crazy.
It was insane. CJ Stroud, 6 touchdown passes. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 15 catches, around 350 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just an insane to do that in that setting in the Rose Bowl. Mm-hmm. Like it's something that we'll remember for a really long time. So I was really impressed with what they did in that game. And I mean, obviously 11-2 by Ohio State standards and going to the Rose Bowl is disappointing.
Right.
But it was still an incredible game.
Well, and I tell you what, too, like we talked about it with Purdue. You can't not mention what Ohio State was missing with Olave being out and Garrett Wilson, all that kind of stuff. And like you honestly, you got to see a sneak preview of what I think and you think, and as much as I hate to admit it, a team that's going to be an absolute problem next year, even with the talent they're going to have to replace in the receiving core. Because I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr., you're talking about a kid that had like 5, I think, receptions all season. He has 3 touchdowns in the first half. It was incredible.
Yeah, I memean, what they were able to do, because you thought that they would be able to zone in on Smith and Jigba and then kind of take that away, but they found ways to score points. And it's insane. Like Ryan Day, he loses Justin Fields and somehow the offense gets better. Like he's made Ohio State better, but I think even more so, like they're enjoyable to watch. I know that maybe there are some people who don't think Ohio State is quite as likable, but I think Ryan Day is a much more likable coach than the predecessor, and so it's a lot of fun to watch that team play.
So it reminds me, and like I'm not trying to be a dick, but I'm sure it is for you because like there's no other team like that in the Big Ten. So you get to experience like what an offense looks like, which is cool. Like every once in a while, right? It's like when the ice cream truck comes around your neighborhood like once every month. So all jokes aside, like Ryan Day is a phenomenal offensive mind and one of the best in the country. But I will say this too, like like what we were. They remind me so much like this period of Ohio State football, like specifically like, 2010s and now it reminds me so much of Florida State in the 90s, because I know for me personally, I hate Ohio State. I go into every single game, like just pulling against them. I don't care if they're playing like Wisconsin, Purdue, or like Red Communist China. Like I am probably pulling against them. So, but they are a unbelievably talented team. And for the most part, kind of head and shoulders above the rest until, as we saw late in the year, but.
Yeah, and that would then bring me to number 2, which is Michigan finally beating Ohio State.
That was awesome.
It was a great game. The atmosphere with the snowfall and all that.
Oh yeah.
Being at Michigan Stadium, the two teams in the locker room at halftime, like flipping each other off and yelling profanities at each other. That was awesome. Like it got the blood pumping even for somebody who doesn't care who wins that game. So, and then the fact that you had Hassan Haskins, I think rushed for 5 touchdowns in that game or something.
Set a record.
Yeah.
And think of it, Tim Biakabatuka ran for like 321 yards in that game in like 95 or whatever it was. Like, I mean, like that's a series that like, we talk about like how heated the rivalries are in the SEC, like the Egg Bowl and the Iron Bowl, but those two, man, they hate each other. I mean, just hate each other.
Yeah. And I think the best part to me is after the game, Jim Harbaugh making the comment about Ryan Day. Some people are born on third and think they hit a triple. Like, I love that kind of shade. I am here for all that kind of shade between, especially when it's like rival head coaches. And those two have been known to butt heads the past couple seasons. Like, I loved it. I love that Jim Harbaugh won that game, called a shot, even though he's 1-5 against the Buckeyes. Like he's not afraid to.
Well, and they weren't. None of the games were really even close. So right. I will say like it was. I love the fact that we got to see a different Harbaugh this year, because that's a dude that's just been, and I've done it as well. Like we all have slow hanging fruit, but that's a guy that just like constantly gets shit on as like, for underperforming and hasn't, reached, like never met expectations. And honestly, you look at the evidence and his resume, like it's a pretty fair assessment of his tenure there. But really this year when you saw him just kind of like in a much different way, like the whole Kirby Smart thing, like he just did it his way. Like they were going to run the football. They were going to be a power team. And they just, I mean, they dominated teams at times. And like, because I don't think there was a single person that saw when they were up 10-7 or 14-10, whatever it was in the second quarter. I don't think anyone thought that Michigan was going to be able to hold on to that, because we haven't seen it. We haven't seen it in like, I don't know, 15 years. That's like 4 Olympiads and like 3 presidents ago. So, I mean, good for them, man. And then they rushed the field.
And then you get the Juwan Howard and Jim Harbaugh meeting at midfield, and I mean, it was just all awesome. Like basically, the entire atmosphere was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I did see, like, I think that what put this over the edge too was Hassan Haskins. Not only the 5 touchdowns, 169 nice yards in that game. Brilliant performance. Yeah. So I put number 1 then with the only disappointment really that Jim Harbaugh had this season, which was losing on the road, Michigan State. Incredible game. Kenneth Walker again, 197 yards, 5 touchdowns in that one. But I think the thing that stuck out to me the most was Ken Jeong and his comment in the that still sticks with me. That was
so good.
With Tran,
you call her Tran. Relax, ESPN.
How dare you?
Oh my God.
He might be the best, or he's up there with Katy Perry in terms of best college game day guest pickers. Yeah. Of all time, because that was hilarious. Set the tone. I mean, incredible game. Mel Tucker, like you said earlier, changed the world of coaching contracts. 11-2 from a team that went 2-5 last season to 11-2. He's 2-0 against Michigan. To do it
that's home. The thing, man. And I will tell you this too. Like one thing that was cool this year, like if anybody follows us along with me personally or like us at SCS, like. We branched off. We did two separate podcasts this year, and so my former partner Connor O'Gara, he did strictly the SEC and covering that. And honestly, as much as I bang the drum for it, like I was excited to do like something that's like kind of SEC focused, but like we get to like bring in the whole country and the rest of these games because there's just like if it's 12 o'clock, I mean, I love college football. I've loved it my whole life. It's my favorite thing in the world. But if it's 12 o'clock and I regardless of my job, and it's Vandy and Mississippi State on one channel, and like I don't know how you do it every week. Like, because this is a game, Michigan and Michigan State, every year that it's at least piques my interest because that's another rivalry. They really hate each other, the big brother, little brother thing. And it's seemingly, I'm sure I'm probably off on this, but it seems like it's always a good game.
Yeah, I mean, typically it has been, especially since Harbaugh arrived. I mean, they've had some really good contests. A lot of them where Michigan's been favored and Michigan State pulls out the upset. Like, and this is another one. Like, after Michigan State got beat by Purdue, Mel Tucker took a shot at Jim Harbaugh because there was a question about a targeting penalty, and Mel Tucker was like, "We don't make excuses. That makes your program soft." And a couple weeks earlier, Jim Harbaugh was complaining about some calls in that Michigan State game that shouldn't. So like everybody just takes their shots at one another in the Big Ten in these rivalries, and that's what adds to it. Like,
yeah,
some people
like
don't like
in the
it.
SEC, it's just Lane Kiffin. It's strictly just Lane Kiffin, like talking shit about everybody, and then Dan Mullen trying to do the same thing, but always failing at it. So no, I think you're right. Like it did add to it. And I will say this too. One of the like most memorable, but also the weirdest and most awkward part, because that is a game like everyone's remember Kenneth Walker going off for 5 touchdowns, and that like, you know, Michigan seemingly has that game in hand. And you're talking about too at the end of the season. I remember telling somebody this, like, we're 2 minutes and one lone touchdown away from Michigan being the number 1 team in the country going into the playoff, and them getting to play Cincinnati and getting like in the driver's seat for that. But one of the things I remember most, and it's not something that like is like a fond memory, it's just like I can't get it out of my head, was former Michigan State coach Mike D'Antoni
Mark D'Antonio, yeah.
Mark D'Antonio.
Was he just standing there looking in the end zone?
Just standing there staring at the celebration of like not his players, but like he ran that program forever, but him just staring at, like, there wasn't a smile on his face. It was like fucking Sting from the rafters, like in the old WCW days, where he like had like took the face paint off. It's like, is he okay? Like, is everything all right, Mark?
Do you remember that scene at the end of Rudy where he finally gets the sack and the groundskeeper standing there in the tunnel and just clap?
The awkward
like
clap?
That was the moment that reminded me of. Was he just stood there, turned around, like he just stared, turned around, and decided like, yep, this is what I did. Like, I think there's no doubt in my mind Mark D'Antonio was taking credit for that.
Oh, without a doubt.
Everybody else was celebrating.
No one else was paying him any attention. And the entire time he was just patting himself on the back. I think you could see it wasn't a smile again, but it was like you could just see the corners of his lips continue to go down, because I feel like he was like, well, how come no one's going to say anything to me, man? Like, well, we're all past it here, Mark. So no, I think it's a great list, man. It's a great list. And I'm excited. There's personally for me, like I didn't rank my favorite Big Ten games, but damn well that Oregon, Ohio State would definitely have been on there somewhere. But I love the list. I think there really are, and like just woven into the fabric of college football. You can't have a season and talk about tradition without some of these games and some of these teams. So Dustin, tell everybody where they can find you on social media and all that good stuff. We appreciate you joining us, man.
Yeah, give us a look at SaturdayTradition.com for all your Big Ten football needs, and then follow us at Tradition on Twitter, or you can follow me at SchuttteCFB.
There you go. All right, appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.